Have you ever stopped to think about what happens to technology after it dies? We usually think of tech history as this straight line of progress, right? The new thing comes along and the old thing just vanishes. But what if that's not the whole story? What if some technologies just refuse to stay dead? Today, we're diving into the really strange story of a global 19th century tech that completely bombed in Japan and then became something else entirely. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we need to start with a question. Before we had flickering screens and broadcast signals, before every single home had a TV, what was the device that brought the whole world right into your living room?
And the answer is this thing, the stereoscope. Back in the 1800s, these viewers were an absolute sensation in the West. You'd slide in a card with two almost identical pictures, look through the lenses, and bam! A flat photo would just leap out at you in stunning 3D. The writer Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. even called it a window onto the world. This was it. This was the first true visual mass medium. And when I say mass medium, I am not kidding. By 1858, which was just a few years after it really took off, one company, the London Stereoscopic Company, had a catalog of over 100,000 different 3D photos. That's like the Netflix library of its day. They had this clear, simple mission: a stereoscope for every home. So it was a massive runaway hit in the West. But when this exact same technology showed up in Meiji-era Japan, it just landed with a thud. I mean, it never became a mass medium. By every commercial standard you can think of, it was a total failure. Which brings us to the big question: why?
The answer, it turns out, isn't really in the technology itself. It's all about the world that it tried to enter. Because Japan in the Meiji era was anything but a blank slate. You see, the stereoscope wasn't walking into a vacuum. Oh no, it was the new kid on the block trying to challenge a powerful, pre-existing media empire that was already completely woven into the fabric of Japanese daily life. So on one side, you've got the stereograph. It's expensive, it's imported, and you need a special viewer just to see it. On the other side, you've got its biggest competitor, the Nishikie, which is a multicolor woodblock print. These things were incredibly cheap, like just 1 or 2 sen, and they covered everything from cool travel scenes to portraits of celebrities. I mean, they were basically the tabloids, the posters, and the art prints of their time, all rolled into one. Why would you buy an expensive foreign gadget when you could get this vibrant, familiar art for pennies? And it wasn't just about the cost. It was about the culture. The stereoscope was a solitary thing, a private experience for one person. But Japanese audiences back then, they loved communal entertainment. They wanted to be in a crowd. You had things like magic lantern shows, where a whole bunch of people would gather together to share stories, to laugh, and to gasp at the same time. This quiet, personal little viewer, it just couldn't compete with that.
Okay, so the stereoscope was a commercial flop. It died. Game over, right? Well, this is where our story gets really, really interesting, because its commercial death was actually the best thing that ever happened to it. Seriously, by failing to become a mass market hit, it was suddenly free from all those commercial pressures. It wasn't a commodity anymore. Instead, it became a tool for this small, really passionate group of people who were about to give it a very, very strange afterlife. And there's actually a perfect name for this whole phenomenon. In 2012, 2 media theorists, Garnet Hertz and Jesse Perica, called it zombie media. And their idea is that some technologies don't just become obsolete. They get brought back to life by enthusiasts for totally new uses and new contexts.
So a zombie medium isn't just old tech. It's a technology that's been sort of hacked back to life. It's kept alive by a do-it-yourself culture that keeps finding new ways to use it long, long after the mainstream has moved on to the next big thing. And get this, in one of those crazy coincidences, the author of our source material found out that his own club in Tokyo had started calling themselves the Stereo Zombies back in 2012. That's the exact same year the academic term was invented. So yeah, the stereoscope in Japan wasn't dead. It was a shambling, creative, and shockingly resilient zombie. So how in the world did this zombie tech manage to survive?
Well, it was all thanks to the passion of amateurs who took this dead technology and ran with it in completely new directions.
Just look at these two pioneers. On one side, you've got Yoshikawa Hayao, who they called the architect. For him, stereoscopy was all about scientific hyperrealism, a way to capture the world with perfect objective truth. But then, on the other side, you had the famous poet Hagiwara Sakutaro. He saw it as a mirror of the soul, this really personal device for exploring his own feelings about memory and nostalgia. The commercial failure is what allowed for all this incredible creative freedom. What's wild is that the practitioners themselves noticed this zombie-like pattern. In the 1980s, when they were founding the Japan Amateur Stereo Photography Association, or JASPA, they actually pointed out what they called a 30-year cycle. The medium had a little boom in the 1920s, then it went quiet. It popped back up in the 1950s with the 3D movie craze, then faded away again. They figured it was due for another revival right there in the 80s. They knew their hobby was a zombie long before anybody had a name for it.
And that cycle of death and rebirth just kept on going, leading to the zombies' most surprising comeback yet. This time in the digital age.
Remember the magic eye craze in the 90s? This was a massive, totally unexpected comeback for the stereoscope's main idea, but with one huge difference. You didn't need a viewer. It was a hardware-free 3D experience. You just had to stare at it.
And in Japan, this wasn't just some gimmick. An artist named Genpei Akasegawa gave it this whole philosophy: brain resort development. The idea was that you weren't just seeing a hidden picture, you were actually developing a rich visual world inside your own mind. Once again, a really introspective, uniquely Japanese take on 3D vision.
Now, this whole DIY spirit, that classic amateur attitude of, if it doesn't exist, I'll just make it myself, it was about to get a huge upgrade and go global. And it was all because of one guy. Meet Masuji Suto. He was an amateur programmer from Ibaraki Prefecture, not some big shot developer. He was just fascinated by 3D, and the tools out there weren't good enough, so he decided to build his own. He created a program called Stereo Photo Maker and then released it for free. This software made the incredibly tricky process of creating perfect 3D photos simple enough for anyone anywhere in the world. A tool born from a local Japanese enthusiast's hobby became the global standard, winning him major international awards and pretty much single-handedly reviving that DIY spirit for the digital age. And this, believe it or not, brings our whole story full circle. From a forgotten 19th century gadget to a thriving global community that's alive and well today. The entire journey just came to a head in 2023. Japan, the very country where the stereoscope originally failed, hosted the World Stereoscopic Congress. And guess who was right at the heart of organizing it? Stereo Club Tokyo, the same group that proudly calls themselves the Stereo Zombies. The solitary little zombie once lurking in the shadows of media history was now being celebrated on the world stage.
The story of the stereoscope in Japan really shows us that failure isn't always the end. Sometimes it's a creative beginning. And it makes you wonder, when you think about vinyl records or floppy disks or old video game consoles, what forgotten media from our own past is just sitting there, not really dead, just waiting for a new generation of enthusiasts to bring it back to life?